What would you not be willing to do to get your family? I think that's a fundamental difference, and I think it's a difference that determines evil.
My position on this is like, when it comes to Israel's response to what happened on that day, I think it was asymmetric, it was ridiculous. They didn't need to go that far, especially when I understand the capabilities of the Israeli military and their intelligence services. These guys are good. When it comes to Palestine and Israel, with my position on that, I agree. I don't think we should be funding Israel. Obviously, what they did over the past 2 years, a genocide, killing all these people, I think that's a problem. And I do think that if we were to stop giving aid to Israel, it would force them to exercise some level of diplomacy with their Arab neighbors, where they would either A, give the Palestinians a state, or B, acclimate and let them come in to some kind of solution where they have some type of citizenship. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that, we're never going to have peace in the Middle East until the Israelis finally solve this Palestine question. Actually, as a matter of fact, that's what led to October 7th, was not answering the Palestine question and trying to do the Abraham Accords and bring all these other Muslim countries in without solving the issue. And then obviously the guys from Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, whatever, they're like, hey, they're trying to build a temple. They don't want to answer the Palestine question. They might bring, because the big talk was they were going to try to bring Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords, and they were having discussions.
Right.
And that's when October 7th happened before that. But that's a whole other conversation. But I do think that, if we want peace in the Middle East, we need the Israelis to figure something out with the Palestinians to give them some sovereignty or some route of determination, whether that's bringing them in or giving them their own state. We need to figure that out, right?
But my one question is, do you think they're more likely or less likely to do that if we completely pull out and leave them to their own devices? I think they're far more likely to just wipe them out and say, F it.
Okay, so you think your position is, you think America is keeping them from nuking them and getting rid of them completely?
I think they have to adhere to some form, and I understand too that obviously there's an exchange of intel and stuff that happens. And by the way, this happens with all nations, and I don't like it when Israel does it any more than I like it when the French does it. Is it in Israel's best interest to have some kind of recognition, statehood, a peace deal? Is it in the interest of their nation to do that, or would it be in their interest for a one-state solution, Israel? And could they do it? They absolutely could.
Yeah, they have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and they're not doing it because they do have Big Brother a little bit going like, hey, don't go too far.
Yeah, well, and Trump did say, hey, you're not going to annex the West Bank, even though they're trying to do that.
Right.
Even the people on the left, right? And the people that are in power now with the Likud party are radicals. Like, these guys want to completely get the Palestinians all the way out. So I see your perspective. You're saying like the United States is keeping them from going full retard and destroying the entire region. But at the same time, we don't know, right? That's like kind of like a.
But would it be full retard? Would it be full retard? Here's the thing. Just looking at America first, okay? Would it be America first if Canada was launching? Let's just not deal. Let's say there was some kind of weird history where we said Saskatchewan is ours, whatever. If they're launching rockets and building tunnels, and we at a certain point go, you know what? We're taking over Canada, right? We would do it. It would be in our interest to say we're going to eliminate you. Mm-hmm. It would be in Israel's interest to eliminate Palestine. That's if left to you two hash it out. I think it ends up uglier, and I'm fine with it. I just don't think people take that into account.
Yeah, so and this is an interesting concept because and it could go either way because Israel does have nuclear weapons, and they're the only country in the region that has nuclear weapons. You can make the argument that Saudi Arabia pseudo has them because it just signed this deal with Pakistan.
Right.
But we don't know. I mean, I'll tell you this. Yes, it would definitely make things worse because all these Arab countries would attack them, and then they would use the Samson option and destroy everybody. So who knows? But they do obviously have nuclear weapons. But I do think if we didn't give cover for them so much and we didn't give them all the support that we have, it would be either A, they'd be forced to the diplomacy table and figure something out, or B, what you're saying, which is a possibility as well, is we'd have a bloodbath in that region where it would literally be a fight of existential crisis.
Because I think diplomacy has been tried, and this is one thing.
I think Netanyahu hasn't exercised diplomacy to the best degree, though. I think he's done everything to sabotage it. Right? He's bragged many times on camera secretly that he sabotaged the Oslo Accords.
I think right now that's true. I think right now isn't. I don't think that's true the entire. I don't think it's true the entire time. And I think he's been more diplomatic than Hamas or the Palestinian Authority has been in the past. In the past, if you look at those points in time, I think he had more talks at the table in good faith.
I think both sides obviously are double crossing each other and don't trust each other, which creates
like it's a heist movie.
A lot of the problems. Yeah. It's like,
the double cross.
Yeah, we're
takes off a mask. Ha ha
ha. Yeah. And it's a very complicated history. But I think in general, I would say because Netanyahu, right, since '96 has been bragging about sabotaging the Oslo Accords. He's been caught on camera talking about it in like the West Bank. There's this famous video of him like in one of the in the West Bank talking about, hey, yeah, I've sabotaged the Oslo Accords between Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin. And many people to this day, even Yitzhak Rabin's wife, I think she wrote a memoir or a book that she suspects to this day that it was Netanyahu that called the shot for him to be killed, because the person that assassinated Yitzhak Rabin was actually a Likud party member, a far Likud party member, and then Netanyahu came into power later, and there hasn't been a two-state solution discussion really since. So
I
both
think
of them are sabotaging it for different reasons.
Though, we should. In other words, if you just take the money,
I think we need to be out of it, and I don't think we should be giving them aid, right? Because it makes us look bad.
And the other nations around them.
Yes.
Because if you add up the money we give to Israel, first off, we give more to like Afghanistan and Iraq. But if you add up the neighboring nations who would likely, like you said, blow them off face of the map, we give them more than Israel individually.
We give Jordan and Egypt a whole bunch of money because of Israel, right? Because hey, you guys are there on the borders. We don't want more war. Like you guys got to play nice and stuff like that. So yeah,
just stop all of it.
We give it a ridiculous. Yes,
I agree. Yeah. What lengths would you go to if your brothers, sisters, cousins, mothers were being held hostage right now and starved? Is there anything you wouldn't do to get them back?
Yeah, no, you would exercise everything in your arsenal to get them back, and I'm definitely sensitive to that with the Israelis.
And there were American hostages too, so that's where we had a dog in that fight. As far as I'm concerned, once our hostages are back, okay, we have no say in it.
Yep.
But that's the difference. That is the difference, because that conflict was whether there was a stand down order, which I think is a legitimate conversation for people to have.
Yep.
Whether people want to talk about what transpired before that, the difference is the hostages and the gleeful celebration and sort of coveting therein. Like, we've got them. What would you not be willing to do to get your family? I think that's a fundamental difference, and I think it's a difference that determines evil.
Yeah. So I think
just an opinion, though.
Yeah, no, and that's totally cool, and I think that's why it's important to have this discourse. My position on it is I think the Israeli retaliation. I don't expect you guys to agree with everything I'm going to say.
No, and I don't. And I appreciate that we can have this conversation.
Absolutely.
I don't want to put you on the...
And do it calmly and not, this is the difference between,
Online, you just call him a shill, and he basically calls you an anti-Semite, and nobody talks. That's the problem with the online world, you know what I mean?
Cashed, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Where's the 7,000?
Stop it!
By the way, they're just Jeffrey dollars, and there's no Toys R Us anymore.
I know, right? They all closed.
Yeah, they are closed. But yeah, so my position on this is like, so... When it comes to Israel's response to what happened on that day, I think it was asymmetric. It was ridiculous. They didn't need to go that far, especially when I understand how the capabilities of the Israeli military and their intelligence services, the Mossad, Shin Bet, Unit 8200, etc. These guys are good. Like, I mean, they were able to launch that pager attack against Hezbollah, right? They had those bombs in those pagers for like 10 years. Operation Rising Lions, with what they did with Iran, where they were able to activate Mossad agents that were that literally had drones in country that they built up over several months. So the reason why I will never accept what Israel did in retaliation to get their hostages back in Gaza is because I know that they can do better, and they have the capability of doing it because they did it with far more competent governments and time.
That's the thing that they didn't
But here's the other thing too. So a lot of people don't know this, but there was a deal on the table to get those hostages back on October 10th of 2023. Because what ended up happening was the Israelis, started putting out, mass rapes, beheaded babies in ovens. They knew that they were going to get bombarded and Gaza was going to be leveled because they were pushing this atrocity propaganda, which later ended up getting debunked later on. But they...
I'll disagree, because unless these were videos from... I've watched some pretty awful videos, and I think everyone should have to watch them.
Yeah, and I watched that, the thing that... There was a 45-minute compilation video that Israel had that they only showed to journalists first, then they put out publicly eventually. With the GoPros and everything
we have a
else.
research team who's able, we're pretty good at this, who was able to kind of find original sources and not just the compilation. And I would say that could it have been overblown, but this idea that there were no rapes or absolute just sheer brutality that challenges your definition of human evil, I wouldn't go, that happened.
Well, no, I'm not denying it that it happened. I'm saying that it didn't happen the way that they're saying. Like babies in ovens, babies getting beheaded, these were all lies pushed by the ZAC organization, which the ZAC organization was the organization that was responsible for picking up a lot of the bodies on the day, because anytime there's a catastrophe in Israel like this, they're some of the first people on the scene to prepare the body for Jewish burial, right? Because they have pretty strict burial things. But Yossi Landa, I think is the guy's name. The dude made like $13 million, right? Pushing this propaganda. And then when they questioned him, like, hey, we did a little bit more investigating. There's no beheaded babies or babies in ovens or, a baby was pulled out of a woman's pregnant stomach. Well, none of this is true. And he was like, yeah, well, I use my imagination when we go in there and everything. And there's footage of all this stuff out there. Now, I'm not denying that October 7th was a terrible day and that there weren't atrocities that were committed. Absolutely.
And kids killed, whether they were killed in ovens or any way.
Yeah, and people died on that day.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important to know that on that day, the Hannibal Directive was activated. Israel killed a lot of their own people with their Apache helicopters, tanks shooting into kibbutzes, because they looked at it like, yo, and this is a strategy that they have, the Hannibal Directive. I know you guys probably know what it is, but for your audience that might not be familiar, the Hannibal Directive is a military strategy where if people are being kidnapped whether civilian or military. They say it's military, but effectively everyone in Israel is a soldier too, because of they pretty much have to join the military and serve for 2 years.
Right.
Instead of them having to deal with the nightmares of a hostage negotiation, because they know for every Israeli that gets back over there to Gaza, they're going to have to give up 100 Palestinians in one of their prisons, they would just rather just shoot them and kill them and not have to deal with that diplomatic nightmare later on. So on that day, October 7th, it was active. The Hannibal Directive was absolutely activated, and this came confirmed by Yoav Gallant, who is our equivalent to like a Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense. That was their defense minister at the time, and the command came that day.
And I just because I don't want to get into
because 1,200 were killed that day.
Yeah, we agree, right? In the hostages, people being killed. Okay.
I just didn't like how Israel responded.
And both sides do that, though, by the way. Both sides push out propaganda, of course, right? Look at our starving kids, even though the fact is, like, they steal water from their own people. Like, this happens all the time. But, okay, what would you be willing to do to get your hostages back at that point? And if we're going to separate between the Israeli government, rightfully so, and the Israeli people, and by the way, the Israeli people are largely secular. So is the government. I think they could shrink the size of government. Like, they would be socialists, according to us. So that's also another reason I don't think we should be supporting them. I mean, we could say the same about the Islamic world in a lot of ways compared to our sort of rugged individualism. Okay, here we are. What do we do with that? If we're involved, like, who are we to tell someone they can't take every measure humanly possible to get those people back?
So to go back to because obviously I had to articulate a little bit about October 7th as to why. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of, because this all leads into, so the deal was put in place on October 10th, roughly. And this comes from Israeli media, by the way. Israel Times have reported this. Basically, a guy who was representing all the families of the hostages was meeting periodically with the Israeli government and cabinet. And Netanyahu said, look, he said this in private, of course, we're prioritizing the eradication of Hamas over getting the hostages back. We're going to go in. We don't care about the deal to get them back, because Hamas was going to give them all the hostages back in exchange for them not invading Gaza. They said no deal. They went in and flattened the place, etc. Now, in the course of doing this, so I think they misstepped because they didn't think that the casualties were going to be that much. Right now, it's somewhere around 60,000. I think once they pull people out the rubble and actually investigate, it's going to be hundreds of thousands. And I don't think that was a proper response. Now, because you said, hey, if you got hostages, what would you do?
And I wanted to do that. Just to clarify, too, the Israeli people versus their government. In other words, there are people who are the brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, or whatever those kids. Those people, at that point in time, like, okay, fine, let's say they attacked their own people. Let's say false flag, which is, by the way, used all the time to sort of vilify one side. And everyone does it. Everyone has done. I mean, the amount of friendly fire that has taken place from the United States. Every single war since Korea just against the Brits. Hundreds of people dead. But those people are going, I need my brother back. Right? And I think to say the act of evil.
Well, they could have got him back on the 10th. And that's
but there were also ceasefire deals between Russia and Ukraine where it's like, by the way, you're going to give us all of it back. It's like, no, you lost. Right? So you can't sit there and negotiate from this position. The same thing if they're going, well, as long as Hamas, no, fucking give them back or we're going to kill all of you. And I think the only reason they didn't kill all of them is because of international diplomacy. And by the way, I agree with you that we shouldn't even be in the UN. So Israel's influence there in the UN, like, I completely agree with you.
We cover them so much at the UN. We veto every single Security Council. We veto. But I will say, when I'm saying October 10th, I'm talking about 3 days after the attack. They could have gotten all the hostages back, but Netanyahu refused.
But what was...
That's being reported, though, by somebody who said that that's what Netanyahu said. Right. So just to be clear, I think it's important. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Netanyahu saw an opportunity. At all.
I agree with that.
Based on his history, know his position coming into this. He's not.
He was in the middle of a corruption trial. He had every incentive. I think he used this.
Completely agree.
Right. So I think that's reasonable, but to put it out there like they could have had everything back, they're probably. I don't know about those conversations. I didn't hear any reporting on that at all.
It was buried in Western media. That's why.
I think now with everything that's come up, I probably would have seen a little bit more about it if there was more to it. So that's the question that I would have.
Right.
Well, the Gaza Ministry of Health
was a parking lot next to it. So this idea that we don't get the Palestinian side or the pro-Palestinian side from Western media, that's horseshit. I won't go along with you on that at all. That is complete horseshit. And also, I went to college where I heard nothing but pro-Palestinian activists, including, by the way, secular Jewish activists in college. I went to Canadian college. So we saw plenty of pieces of propaganda coming from the side saying, look at what's happening in Palestine, that we invariably found out were also false. So let's just call that a wash.
So obviously there's very, anti-Israel sentiment in the media. I'm not making that argument that there isn't. My thing is just that the way they went about October 7th with the capabilities that they have, the intelligence that they have, they could have absolutely went about it in another way to get their hostages back without the mass loss of human life